You're listening to the Back Porch Talk podcast. Danny and Jason had many discussions and debates on the back porch while making pivotal investment moves with assets. That's right, with trading cards. They welcome you to the back porch and right into those discussions about current sports news with a fresh and unique twist. So come on and join us. Welcome to the Back Porch Talk podcast. I'm your coach, Jason.
Coach Danny.
Fans, we got a full show for you today. First, we'll get right into the NBA playoffs, and then the NFL had their draft, and we'll definitely talk about it. But first, Danny, right into the NBA playoffs, and where the Milwaukee Bucks takes this L, 126-113 against the Pacers. They are now down 3-1. Let me just say, Brook Lopez showed up, 27 points, 9 rebounds. Miles Turner for the Pacers had a big game, 29 points, 9 rebounds, 3 blocks. Middleton appeared injured at one point in time in the game, but comes back immediately after leaving the floor and went to the locker room. Kane comes back, scores 25 points on 9 for 22 shooting. This series is over with. And I indicated this at the very beginning. I gave the Pacers the victory in this series 4-2. I said Pacers in 6. This could very well be Pacers in 5. In this particular game, Dame does not play because of the injury to his Achilles/ankle, and it showed. But more importantly, we had the likes of Bobby Portis, who only played 7 minutes. That's because he got ejected in the first quarter. And that was a key component there. Bucks were already struggling, winning the game with Portis, but without him, there was no way. But I got to give the Bucks some credit here. They showed a lot of fight. I have a whole lot more to say, but what say you about these Milwaukee Bucks?
Well, Jay, man, it's hard for them to overcome not having your 2 top players, right? And the crazy part is, in both of these games in Indiana, the Bucks they could have won these games. Indiana tried to give them away, especially the one on Friday night, where Indiana was up 18 after the first quarter, and the Bucks battled back. Middleton had over 40. They could have actually got one or both of these games, and they just couldn't do it in the end, man. They just were gassed. This is actually a blessing in disguise, these last 2 games at least, to see some of the younger talent. You've been clamoring for, and a few of us have been clamoring for, just to see what these guys have. And they're getting valuable minutes in the playoffs, albeit it's not the greatest circumstances. So I'm curious to see tomorrow night what the approach is. Well, they haven't said anything about Giannis being out yet. At least I haven't seen any reports. I don't know if you have, or Dame. They haven't reported anything on either of them.
I would say this, Danny. I think to that point, keep Giannis out.
I would prefer they just stay out, because you don't want any Achilles injuries, because then they're out for the year.
Yeah, exactly. I would just keep him out. This series is a wash, man. With the type of season that the Milwaukee Bucks have had, the roller coaster ride with regards to getting a coach, being quote unquote successful record wise, but having issues defensively with this new head coach, getting Dame, trading away Drew Holiday, dealing with the lack of defense on the wing, getting rid of the coach, getting Doc acclimated, have a new philosophy, new system in place. And then not have enough practices to even implement what you really want to implement. And then all of a sudden you're in the playoffs, and then what happens even before the playoffs start, a couple games beforehand, Giannis goes down.
Yep.
You have injuries in the playoffs. This has just been a roller coaster ride. This has been a drama-filled season for the Milwaukee Bucks. And I mentioned this, Danny, in our chat. I think one of the things we have to put a lot of onus on who fault this really is, and I'm going to say it's Bucks organization. Just the stability, and I think it also comes with the Milwaukee Bucks being fearful or panicking in terms of what Giannis is going to do. See, we didn't have this problem when Giannis was up and coming.
Yep.
And, there were things put in place, players put in place, and ultimately he got to a championship. And there were steps to the championship.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since we got the championship, you have to look at the times that we got bounced. We get bounced in the first round this year. Last year was the first round. I think the year before that was the second round. We haven't been back to the conference finals since the championship. So that says a lot, in my opinion. And I think you have to put onus on the Bucks for listening to quote unquote superstar. And granted, I think there's a difference between listening to a superstar and taking the opinions of a superstar and incorporating in it. I think there's a difference. There's a fine line. You ain't got to do everything a superstar says. You still have the landscape of what's happening in the NBA. And we'll get into that a little bit later on here too, Danny. But I think the Bucks panic, and it shows.
As we always say, the offseason is going to be very interesting to see how they pivot because they're going to have to make some type of move.
In the NBA, there is a change. There's a shift happening right before us. When you have the Timberwolves sweeping the Phoenix Suns, Anthony Edwards has announced his arrival as a superstar. And that is a young team. That's a young player right there. They swept the Phoenix Suns. They swept KD, which says a whole lot, man. And so you have the likes of the New York Knicks, a relatively young team. Actually has DiVincenzo, who was on our team. We drafted. And he's been balling out of his mind this year. And the Knicks are now up 3-1 against the Philadelphia 76ers. That series to me is done. The Mavericks against the Clippers, you have the Clippers prevailing here. That series is tied 2-2. But when you look at the Dallas Mavericks, that's a relatively young team. When you look at the team as a whole. So it's going to behoove the Bucks to actually look at getting younger, getting more agile, getting more athletic to really compete. Because gone are the days of how we competed in the past, the most recent past. We had our opportunities the past couple of years to go to the conference finals. And the door has been shut. So we have to really rethink how we have this team. But what say you, Danny, about the rest of the NBA playoffs?
Yeah, congratulations to the Timberwolves, man. Impressive series. My boy Edwards did his thing. And if you watch Anthony Edwards, he just has this bounce in his step. Like he, as big as he is, man, he's so quick. Like his first step is so quick. So if you haven't watched Anthony Edwards play, check him out because he's a good player. And Gobert has been solidifying the down in the paint, and with Cat being back, that's helped immensely. So they're playing well, man. My Lakers, talking about on life support, they play tonight, Game 5 against the Nuggets, and they showed a stat where the Lakers have led in these games like a crazy. It's like 5-1 versus Denver leading in the games, but the Lakers trail 3-1 because about final, execution at the end. So see what they do tonight. They're going to Denver.
Listen here, man. I put it like this. I think Devo gonna have extra time to be on his cell phone. And it's not gonna be on the bench. It's gonna be in Cancun. Or gone fishing. You have plenty of time to be on his cell phone, man.
So the Lakers, that's going to be a good game though. All the games have been competitive. And I gotta give it to Anthony Davis. He showed up. It's just a matter of they haven't executed in the fourth quarter, which they did on Saturday night.
And I have to say this too, just to add, to that list of young teams, man. You have to look at even the OKC Thunder young team, who's announced their arrival.
Yeah,
You
they're
have to
doing the
think about
thing.
yeah, you have to think about the Celtics too. I honestly, I think when you start to look at some of these, uh, even in the playoffs, bottom dweller teams, I think these may be opportunities for the Bucks to poach some of these players, man,
Yep,
who are young, who has some playoff experience. This is going to be an interesting offseason. But man, I have to say, this first round of the playoffs has been very intriguing.
hmm
I think it's just been, to summarize to me, just the announcement that this is a young man's league, and these young teams are coming, and even more so, they've announced that they're here.
agree.
And now, Danny, on to the NFL draft, and where this past weekend, it's been very interesting, interesting picks here by the Green Bay Packers and also by the Atlanta Falcons. I think more so by the Atlanta Falcons, and we'll get into that here a little bit. But let me just start off this particular segment by saying, unfortunately, there were no drafts from HBCUs. There has been invitations to mini camps, but no draft picks to the league. And that is a travesty, in my opinion. And I think it really reeks of, I don't know, man. I think this furthers put an emphasis on just the pay gap, in my opinion. A lot of people can say it's due to the level of competition that that HBCUs go through throughout the course of the season. Um, there can be a whole lot of excuses, but when you have the measurables, i.e., whether it's the 40-yard dash or the camps or whatever the case may be, the combines, the measurables are up there.
hmm
Um, there's film, and the HBCUs, they do play at the Division 1 on up level, and so there's been instances of where players have played very well against the North Carolinas. I don't know what HBCUs need to do at this juncture. I don't know if they need to put more games on the schedule, or what, but something's got to be done. Because here's the other thing that is producing: a lot of NFL players contribute back to their respective schools,
hmm
and that's a lot of money that can go back to whatever school they came from. We're furthering the gap here from an HBCU standpoint, especially in the athletic departments, because student athletes who should be drafted, they're not being drafted. They're not getting paid as much, and therefore they can't contribute as much to the athletic department. So there has to be something said there. But the rest of the draft, the Packers, I think they did an excellent job, quite frankly, on their draft. They drafted where we needed to be drafted. Offensive tackle Jordan Morgan, 6'5", 311. We needed to have some more offensive line presence there. We got it, and he can maneuver and be flexible and going from tackle to guard. And then Ezra and Cooper, linebacker, and the rest of the draft was filled with defense for the most part. With the exception of the third round, 25th pick, Marshawn Lloyd out of USC, because some considered that to be the best running back in the draft. We needed that because of Aaron Jones' departure. And we drafted a quarterback in Michael Pratt from Tulane, just to fill the quarterback room. But the rest was defense, and so I think the Packers did an excellent job, Danny. But what say you about the draft, in particular your Atlanta Falcons?
On the HBCU side, because I saw that as well, was they can't blame it on exposure, man. This day and age, everything is on TV. If
Exactly.
you want to see it, you're gonna find it, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just a travesty just to see that. And we thought, it was a glimmer of hope when Dion, Coach Prime was in Jackson State.
Mm-hmm.
We're shining a light on it. And like Doug Williams mentioned something yesterday about this as well, but it just needs to, people just need to still, stand up for these players. And because there's no reason not one player and, all the games we watched to say that one of those players is not a part of the draft. We'll see what happens there. But just need some advocacy for those players, and hopefully something will change. And as far as my Atlanta Falcons, as usual on draft day, we cause controversy, good and bad. And this year was around Michael Penix. He picked number 8, where we just signed Kirk Cousins. All right, Jason, you have the 8th pick. You have all these teams trying to move up because it wasn't Penix. They were saying may go later first round. It's a whole bunch of posturing coming into the draft.
Mm-hmm.
But JJ McCarthy was sitting there too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm trying to get at is you could have moved down, amassed picks, and then still, if you still want to go this route of Michael Penix, you could have did that later because Minnesota was trying to move up, from what I understand. And you had the Vegas Raiders and Denver. So yeah, all these teams sitting behind you that needed a quarterback. Why not take advantage of the spot and move down? And now you bring something else into camp for no reason. For one, it's not fair to Penix because he's the one that got drafted. Like he said, it's on Fontenot and Raheem Morris. Fontenot is GM, so I'm gonna put it on him. It could be an insurance policy for Kirk Cousins because he is coming off an Achilles injury.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the other thing that I think gets lost in this is Penix is left-handed. So if your offense isn't built, like your offensive line and his protections, that's a whole different scheme.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm like every year, man, every year, something is up with us in this draft. It's just a whole different scenario that they didn't need to bring upon themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They needed defense. They went offense. And if they were going to go offense, they could have traded back. That was my whole qualm with the whole deal. We'll see. But then the second round, they move up in the draft to get a DT. The DT out of Clemson, I'll say it like that. You trade a 3rd round pick to move up. What are you doing? For a dude that was like, there was like a slew of DTs that went right after him. I'm like, oh man, you can't make this up because you need all the good picks you can get, especially like in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd round. But then they got Trice out of Washington and Dorius out of Oregon. So those are good picks. I'll give them that. But you lost a 3rd round pick to move up for a dude that is a project based on his playing time and things like that. Sometimes I wonder why I even follow the Falcons because they just drive me nuts. But I'll tell you this, if there's like a blowback and this season is a failure, Fontenot's gone.
But and to that point, Danny, I mean, we're talking about Kirk Cousins, you're absolutely right, coming off of the Achilles injury, and we're talking about, though, to him, $100 million guaranteed over multiple years now.
At least 3.
Yeah. So going to have Penix sit for 3?
That's what the report is. They're saying almost 4 years. I'm like, I'll be almost 28 by the time he gets on the field. And
you don't want to get on the field, man.
Yes.
And plus you need to see what he has.
Yes.
So
go ahead, Jason.
I think it was an insurance policy, somebody on a rookie contract, insurance policy. But at the same token, man, I think you could have drafted for immediate help.
That's they probably sold Kirk Cousins on that.
Mm-hmm.
Why he signed. Mm-hmm. So when you see that as Kirk Cousins, and granted, Kirk Cousins, he hasn't won anything. So I don't want to hear anything out of him either. He got paid.
He got paid royally.
But if you knew you were thinking about picking Penix, why pay him? This goes back to the whole Justin Fields was out there for a bag of basketballs or footballs. Mm-hmm. Go that route. If you're going to think about getting Penix, don't commit all this money and capital to Kirk Cousins if you knew this was in the back of your mind. And
but to that point, was it in the back of their mind? Could it have been where with, keep in mind, things kind of flip where free agency now is before the draft, whereas years past, it was flipped. And so free agency happens. They go get Kirk Cousins. They're still not done with their whole draft assessment. Yep. They have a whole another month and change to, look at all the drafts that they have, all the scenarios, et cetera. They need to look at their roster to see where they need to plug holes in. Maybe at the time where they got Kirk Cousins, maybe it wasn't thought at that point in time to get Penix. I don't know. It's all hypothetical. But to your point, that is on a GM.
You're hamstrung both ways because your number one pick isn't playing. And if you're truly trying to go for a playoff run, which has been eluded us for years now, this doesn't help the defense. It doesn't help anyone at this point in time. All parties involved. Heineke is still there too. Don't forget, he's still in the quarterback room. And he'll be gone after this year because,
definitely.
But it's one of those things.
Beforehand.
It's
not beforehand.
Yeah. But, yeah, I don't know, man. It's just a commitment of money because they could have used those resources towards other players outside of Kirk Cousins if that's what they were doing. But it was just typical Falcons, man. In the headlines for all the wrong reasons.
Thank you for joining us at Back Porch Talk Podcast. You can also join us on Twitter by tweeting us at @back_podcast. For more information, you can go to our website, which is backporchtalkpodcast.com. You can also email us at backporchtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Again, thank you for joining us, and remember that there's enough hate in the world, so go ahead and spread a little love.